She left on a rainy Tuesday. I remember because the raindrops on the window blurred her face just enough to make goodbye look softer than it was. She had promised she'd be back soon. Just a few weeks, she said, her voice trembling as she kissed her little boy's forehead. He was 3 then, too young to understand promises, too old to forget them. Every evening since, he's waited by the same gate, clutching the same worn-out toy car she gave him, asking the same question, "Is Mama coming today?" And every time I tell him, "Maybe tomorrow," a piece of my voice breaks. 3 years have passed. The toy car's missing a wheel now, but he still keeps it polished, waiting for the sound of footsteps that never come. She said she'd come back for her child. She never said she wouldn't take my heart with her when she left. It was raining the morning she left, that kind of rain that doesn't just fall but lingers like the sky itself is unsure about letting go. The street outside our small house was empty except for the echo of water hitting tin roofs. Inside, silence sat heavy, heavier than the suitcases she'd packed the night before. Her name was Lena, and the little boy clutching her leg, his round cheeks damp with tears, was Rafi, my nephew, though over the past 3 years he's become something far more than that. I remember standing by the door, watching her struggle to meet his eyes. She was 26, exhausted, beautiful in that fragile way that people are when they've fought too long and won too little. Her fingers trembled as she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, forcing a smile that didn't quite hold. "I'll come back soon, okay?" she whispered, kneeling to his level. "Just a few weeks. Be good for Uncle Armin." He nodded, though I don't think he understood. Children rarely understand departures. They just feel the space that follows. She stood up, looked at me, and for a second, I saw everything she wasn't saying: guilt, fear, desperation. "Are you sure about this?" I asked quietly. She hesitated. "I don't have a choice. You know that." I did. Her husband, my younger brother, Hamid, had died a year earlier in an accident that left more bills than memories. Lena had tried to manage, sewing clothes, selling trinkets, taking night shifts at the textile factory, but life doesn't care about effort. A distant cousin had promised her work in the city. A stable job, a place to stay. "Just for a little while," she said, "until I can stand on my own 2 feet." And so she packed a single suitcase, left her son with me, and walked out into the rain. No drama, no tears from her, just quiet determination, the kind that's both admirable and tragic. Rafi ran to the gate as the taxi pulled away. "Mama!" he cried, waving his tiny arms. She turned once, hand pressed to the window, face blurred by raindrops or maybe by tears. I stood behind him, hand on his shoulder, whispering words I didn't believe. "She'll be back soon, Rafi. Don't worry." He looked up at me with wet lashes and said, "Mama said she'll bring me a car." I forced a smile. "Then you'd better be good till she comes back." That night, when the rain stopped, he sat by the window, holding his toy car, a red one missing a door. He waited until he fell asleep, sitting up, his little head resting against the glass. I carried him to bed, tucked him in, and for the first time in years, I prayed. Not for me, but for her. For the strength to find what she was chasing. For the promise to stay unbroken. The weeks passed quietly. Every morning, I walked Rafi to the small preschool down the street. He never complained, never cried, just looked up at the sky sometimes and said, "It's not raining anymore. Maybe Mama can come now." I'd smile and nod, though my heart tightened each time. In the evenings, I'd make us dinner, rice, lentils, and whatever vegetables I could afford, and he'd tell me stories his mother used to read to him. She said the moon is a big light Mama turns on, so I'm not scared, he'd say, tracing circles on the window. And I'd nod again, holding my breath to keep it from breaking. A month passed. Then 2. Still no call, no letter, no word. At first, I told myself she was just busy. The city was big, overwhelming, full of strangers. Maybe she'd lost her phone. Maybe her job didn't allow calls. But deep down, I knew better. People don't go silent when they're okay. They go silent when they're not. I didn't tell Rafi that, of course. I told him she was saving up money, buying gifts, preparing a surprise. And for a while, that lie worked, because children believe in promises the way grown-ups believe in excuses. By the 4th month, the school year ended. Rafi stood on the small stage, wearing a paper crown, holding a certificate that said Best Smile. When it was time for parents to come take pictures, he scanned the crowd eagerly, eyes wide with hope. "Is Mama here?" he whispered. I shook my head gently. "She couldn't make it today, buddy. But I'm here, see?" He smiled, a brave, tiny smile, and nodded. But later, when I lifted him into my arms, he buried his face in my shoulder and whispered, "Maybe next time." That night, after putting him to bed, I found myself scrolling through my old messages with her, reading her last words again and again. Just a few weeks, I promise. The last message she sent was a photo. Rafi asleep, a small hand clutching her hair. It was dated 3 days before she left. As months turned into a year, the waiting became routine. Every Sunday, he'd sit by the gate with his toy car, watching people come and go. He'd ask every woman who passed by, "Are you going to the city? Can you tell my mama I'm waiting?" Sometimes they'd smile. Sometimes they'd look away. And I'd just sit on the porch, helpless, pretending to read the newspaper while my chest felt like it was collapsing in slow motion. I didn't know what to tell him anymore. "She'll be back soon," had started to sound like cruelty disguised as comfort. But how do you break a child's faith without breaking his heart? Then one day, nearly a year after she left, a letter arrived. It wasn't from her. It was from a friend she'd worked with at the factory. The handwriting was shaky. The paper smelled of sweat and ink. "Dear Armin, I don't know if this will reach you, but Lena asked me to write if anything ever happened. She left the factory 3 months ago. She said she was going abroad for better work. She didn't tell anyone where. I'm sorry. I wish I knew more." That was it. No address. No number. Nothing but silence dressed as closure. I folded the letter and stared at it for a long time. Then I looked at Rafi, who was lying on the floor building a small road out of matchboxes for his toy car. "Uncle," he said without looking up, "when Mama comes back, can we go to the park together?" I opened my mouth, but no words came. Just a quiet ache that filled every space between his question and my silence. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, listening to the wind, thinking about Lena. Was she alive? Was she safe? Did she think of him? Of us? The city was full of broken promises, and she had walked straight into its mouth. But somewhere inside me, a stubborn part still hoped. Because love, no matter how bruised, refuses to die quietly. And so, every morning after that, I walked Rafi to school, packed his lunch, told him stories, fixed his toys. Every evening, he waited by the gate. And every night, I whispered to the stars, "Come back, Lena. He still believes in you." A year is a long time to keep hoping. But Rafi never stopped. Every day after school, he'd run straight to the gate and look down the road. The same cracked, narrow street where his mother's taxi had disappeared. Sometimes, when the evening sun painted everything gold, he'd say, "Uncle, I think I saw Mama's car." And I'd answer softly, "Maybe tomorrow, Rafi." It was easier than saying no. He grew taller, started losing his baby fat, learned how to tie his own shoes, but his hope didn't shrink. It only grew with him, stubborn and shining like a candle in wind. At night, he would draw pictures of her. Crayon sketches, stick figures holding hands, smiling faces under crooked suns. In every drawing, she was coming home. I used to tape those drawings to the refrigerator, pretending it was art when really, it was evidence, proof that faith could survive neglect. One evening, I caught him standing on a stool, whispering to the calendar. "What are you doing?" I asked. He turned around, holding a red marker. "I'm counting the days till Mama comes back." He had circled every Sunday for the next 2 months. "She always said Sunday is when good things happen," he said proudly. I nodded, though my throat felt like sandpaper. "Then let's hope next Sunday's her favorite," I whispered, but Sundays came and went. So did months. And seasons. And Lena, she stayed gone WY the second year. Her absence had stopped being a wound. It had become a scar. Visible, familiar, no longer bleeding but still tender to touch. People in the neighborhood stopped asking about her. Pity has a short attention span. Sometimes when they saw me walking Rafi to school, they'd whisper things like, "Poor child, maybe the mother remarried," or Some people just can't handle responsibility. I never answered. I didn't know what was true anymore. All I knew was that the boy holding my hand still looked at every passing bus like it might carry his world back home. One afternoon, while cleaning the cupboard, I found her old notebook, half burnt from the fire that had started in the kitchen months before she left. Inside were sewing patterns, grocery lists, and one page torn at the edge with a name and an address written in faded ink. Golden Thread Garments, Sector 12, City District. It must have been the factory where she worked before leaving. That night, after putting Rafi to sleep, I stared at that page for hours. I hadn't gone looking for her before, partly out of fear, partly out of anger. But something in me shifted that night. Maybe it was the way Rafi had asked. Do mamas forget their children if they get too far away? I didn't have an answer for him, but I knew I couldn't let that question stay unanswered. So the next morning, I packed a bag, locked the shop early, and took the first bus to the city. The city smelled like rain and smoke and indifference. Towers of glass rose above streets where tired people moved like clockwork. I asked for directions until I found the address. The factory was old, its walls faded, its windows cracked. A guard sat outside drinking tea. "Excuse me," I said, showing him the page. "Does anyone named Lena work here?" He squinted. "Lena? There used to be a Lena, yes. She left years ago." My heart quickened. "Do you know where she went?" He shrugged, said she was going abroad. Some agency arranged it. We get girls like that all the time. They leave for domestic jobs in the Middle East. "Did she come back?" He shook his head. "No one ever does." His words were casual, but they hit me like stones. "Do you know the agency's name?" I asked. He thought for a moment. "Something with a bird in it. Maybe Blue Wing Travels?" "The office is near the old bus depot." I thanked him and left. At the agency, a woman behind a dusty desk looked up from her phone as I entered. "Yes?" she asked, uninterested. "I'm looking for someone, a woman named Lena Ahmed. She left through your agency about 2 years ago." She frowned. "We don't give out personal details." "She's my sister-in-law," I insisted. "She left her son behind. I just need to know if she's safe." The woman sighed, flipping through a thick ledger. "Ahmed, you said?" Her fingers stopped mid-page. "Lena Ahmed, yes. Hired by a family in Doha. Housemaid. Left 3 years ago." My pulse raced. "Do you have any contact for her?" The woman shook her head. "No. Once they go abroad, communication happens through the sponsor. We only handle the paperwork." I leaned on the counter. "Please, I'm just trying to find her." She hesitated, then looked around and whispered. There was a problem with that batch. Some visas got canceled halfway. Some workers didn't even reach their destinations. No one followed up. Maybe she went through another route. Maybe she didn't go at all. Her words blurred together. I thanked her, though I couldn't feel my legs. Back on the bus home, the city lights passed like ghosts. I kept seeing her face through the window that day. She left, brave, trembling, full of impossible hope. Had she been tricked? Lost? Was she still alive somewhere? Thinking about the son who still waited by the gate? When I reached home, Rafi was already asleep, curled up beside his toy car. I sat beside him for a long time, brushing his hair back, fighting tears. What could I tell him? That his mother might never come back? That sometimes love gets swallowed by the same world it tries to escape? Instead, I whispered, "She's still trying to find her way back, buddy. She loves you more than anything." Because even if I didn't know where Lena was, I knew that was true. Mothers don't stop loving. They just get lost sometimes in the storms of survival. Weeks turned into months. Life settled back into its quiet rhythm. Rafi started school again. New uniform, same smile. He'd still ask about her sometimes, but not as often. Hope had softened into memory. One night, as I tucked him in, he asked, "Uncle, if Mama comes and I'm sleeping, will you wake me up?" "I will," I said, "even if it's very late." Even then, he smiled. "Okay, I don't want to miss her again." He closed his eyes and drifted to sleep, his tiny hand still holding mine. I stared at the ceiling, feeling that familiar ache, the one made of unanswered prayers. And I realized something. He wasn't the only one waiting for her. I was too. Not for Lena, the mother, or the widow, or the lost girl, but for Lena, the part of my own heart that still believed in return. By the time the second winter came, Rafi had stopped asking when his mother would return. Now, he only asked why, and somehow, that question was harder to answer. He was 6, old enough to notice when the world wasn't fair, young enough to think it still could be. The gate where he once waited every evening now stood rusted, vines curling up the sides. But he still walked there sometimes, tracing his fingers over the iron bars as if they were the strings of a memory he couldn't let go. One evening, as the sun sank behind the houses, he turned to me and asked, "Uncle, if Mama loved me, why didn't she come back?" The air felt heavy. I put down my tools. I'd been fixing a chair outside the shop and knelt beside him. "She does love you, Rafi. Maybe she just couldn't." He frowned. "Couldn't find a bus?" "Maybe not," I said softly. "Or maybe she got lost on the way." He looked down at his hands, quiet for a moment. "Then I'll wait until she finds the way again." That night, I sat awake long after he fell asleep. The house felt too still, the kind of silence that reminds you how big absence can be. I thought about all the faces I'd seen at the agency, the women who vanished into cities and countries they couldn't pronounce, chasing promises made by people who never intended to keep them. Was Lena one of them now? Another name in a file? Another person the world forgot to remember? I couldn't accept that. Not without knowing for sure. So I started looking again. Quietly, this time, through people I knew, friends who worked in the city, even a cousin who managed an office near the embassy district. I didn't tell Rafi. I couldn't raise his hope unless I had something real. Weeks passed, and I heard nothing. Then, one afternoon, a message came. It was from my cousin Tarek. "Armin, there's a woman named Lena on a labor registry in Doha. No last name listed. It's old, 3 years ago, but I could check if you want." My hand shook as I typed back, "Please do." For days, I lived in a fog of anticipation. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped. But each time it was just another supplier, another order, another reminder that life doesn't pause for heartbreak. Finally, on the 6th day, Tarek replied, "I found a file. Lena, 26, domestic worker, passport from our country. Contract terminated after 6 months. No record after that. I'm sorry, bye." I stared at the message until the words blurred. 6 months. That was all. 6 months between goodbye and disappearance. That night, I sat outside the house, watching the stars through the quiet branches of a neem tree. The world kept moving. The crickets sang, a dog barked somewhere, a rickshaw rattled past. But inside me, something stopped. I didn't tell Rafi what I'd learned. How could I? How do you tell a child that the person they love most might not even be alive to love him back? Instead, I kept the truth folded like a letter I was too afraid to open again. As spring came, life began to bloom again around us, even where grief had tried to root itself too deep. Rafi started playing football with the neighbors' kids. He'd come home covered in dirt, laughing, holding his shoes in his hands. Sometimes, he'd still bring up his mother, but now his voice carried less ache, more curiosity. What color were Mama's eyes again? Did she like mangoes? Did she ever climb trees? And each time, I'd answer as best I could, weaving her memory into something warm, something alive. She had brown eyes, like tea when the light hits it. She loved mangoes so much she'd fight you for the last slice. And no, she didn't climb trees, she was scared of heights. He laughed at that. "Then I'll climb for both of us." And just like that, the house began to sound like home again. But even as laughter returned, guilt never left. I promised my brother I'd look after them, his wife and son, and now one was gone, and the other was learning how to live without her. Some nights, I dreamed of Lena standing in the doorway, suitcase in hand, her hair wet from rain, saying, "I told you I'd come back." Then I'd wake up to the empty hall and the sound of Rafi breathing softly in his room. Grief is strange. It doesn't shout, it lingers. It teaches you how to keep living while quietly taking something from you every day. One afternoon, about 2.5 years after she'd left, I was working in the shop when a letter arrived. No return address, just my name. Inside was a single sheet, handwritten, "To whoever has taken care of Rafi. I don't know if this will reach you. I'm sorry. For everything. I'm in a place far away. It's not what I thought it would be. Please tell him I love him. Please tell him I tried. The handwriting was hers. Faint, shaky, but hers. There was no date, no country name, no contact, just that final line. Please tell him I tried. I sat in the back room for hours, holding the letter like a fragile life. She was alive, at least when she wrote it, but she was trapped somewhere beyond reach, and her only message to her child was an apology wrapped in silence. That evening, when Rafi came home, he found me sitting by the window. "Uncle," he said, "you look sad." I smiled faintly. "Just tired, buddy." He climbed in my lap and held up a drawing he'd made. It was the three of us, him, me, and a woman standing at the gate. "She's back," he said proudly. "See? She brought me a new car." I looked at the picture for a long time. "Yeah," I whispered. She did. Later, after he slept, I placed Lena's letter in a small tin box with the rest of her things, her scarf, her photo, a few old earrings. I locked it, not out of secrecy, but to keep hope safe. Hope is fragile when it's real. As the third year began, Rafi changed in small, quiet ways. He stopped drawing her as much, but he started writing short notes, little messages. Sometimes I'd find one tucked under my pillow. "If Mama comes, tell her I'm in school now. Tell her I don't cry at night anymore. Tell her I still love her." I kept them all, folded neatly beside her letter. Children have a way of healing without forgetting. Maybe that's the most beautiful kind of forgiveness there is, the kind that keeps the door open just in case love ever finds its way back. Then, one morning, something extraordinary happened. Rafi was playing outside when a postman stopped at the gate. "Letter for Armin Malik," he called. Another letter. This one had a foreign stamp, faint but real. The handwriting was still hers, more rushed this time. "Armin, if you're reading this, please know I never meant to stay away. I'm coming home soon. Tell Rafi his mother is finally coming. Lena." I read it over and over, my heart pounding like it hadn't in years. She was alive. She was coming back. When I told Rafi, his face lit up like the first sunrise after endless night. "Really, Uncle?" he gasped. "She's coming." "She is," I said, voice trembling. "She really is." He ran to the gate. The same gate he'd waited by for 3 years, and whispered, "See, Mama? I told you I'd wait." The letter came in early summer. By the time the monsoon clouds began to gather again, 3 years since that rainy Tuesday she'd left, Lena returned. But not the way I'd imagined. For weeks after her second letter, Rafi woke up every morning asking, "Is Mama here yet?" He'd rush to the gate before breakfast, stared down the dusty road, and wave at every passing car. "She'll come soon," he'd say with certainty, like it was already written somewhere the rest of us couldn't see. I wanted to believe him. I truly did. But hope, I'd learned, can be cruel when it comes too late. Then, one humid afternoon, the sound of a taxi broke through the quiet hum of the street. Rafi dropped his toy and ran to the window. "Uncle," he shouted. "It's her. It's Mama." I followed slowly, afraid to believe my own eyes. The car door opened. A woman stepped out, thinner, older, her face marked by the kind of exhaustion that doesn't wash off. Her clothes were simple, her hands scarred, but her eyes were still Lena's. She froze when she saw Rafi. He stared back for a heartbeat that seemed to stretch forever, and then he ran, not hesitantly, not cautiously, but with all the love and longing that 3 years of waiting had stored in his little heart. "Mama!" he cried. She dropped her bag and fell to her knees, arms open. He crashed into her embrace, sobbing and laughing at once. Lena clung to him, trembling, whispering over and over, "I'm here, baby. I'm here." I stood at the gate, my chest tight. For a moment, the whole world seemed to exhale. They stayed like that for a long time, mother and son, time melting between them. When she finally looked up at me, her eyes were full of tears and shame and gratitude all at once. "Armin," she said softly. I didn't trust myself to speak. All I could manage was a small nod. She hesitated, then whispered, "Thank you for keeping my promise alive when I couldn't." I swallowed hard. "Welcome home, Lena." Later that evening, after Rafi had fallen asleep with his arms still wrapped around her, Lena and I sat on the porch. The same porch where I'd watched the rain the day she left. The same porch where I'd prayed for her to survive. The sky was turning violet. and the crickets were beginning to sing. I didn't think I'd ever see this place again, she said quietly. Where were you? I asked gently. She looked down at her hands, the scars visible even in the fading light. In Doha, she said, but not where I thought I'd be. The agency lit. I was sold to a family as a servant. They took my passport, said I owed them for the flight, the food, the bed. Every time I asked to call home, they said, later. Her voice broke. Later never came. I listened in silence as she told me about the endless days, 14-hour shifts, one meal a day, a room the size of a closet. How she'd save scraps of paper to write letters she couldn't send. How one night she ran, barefoot, terrified, until a kind driver helped her reach her embassy. They found me work at a shelter, she said, for women like me. I stayed there until I could come home. I asked quietly, why didn't you write sooner? She smiled sadly. I tried. Twice. I didn't even know if my letters would reach you. I thought maybe you'd moved on. Maybe Rafi forgot me. I shook my head. He never did. Her eyes glistened. He waited every day, I said. Every single day. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The night air was thick with unspoken forgiveness. Finally, she said, I don't deserve his love. You do, I replied. You just forgot what it cost. She nodded slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. I want to make it right, Armin. I don't know how, but I will. I looked toward the window, where Rafi slept with his toy car still in his hand, the same one he'd promised to show her. You already started, I said softly. You came back. The next few weeks felt like healing stitched itself into the walls of the house. Rafi was inseparable from her, following her into the kitchen, showing her his drawings, reading her his school lessons in a voice full of pride. Everywhere they went, laughter followed. It wasn't the loud, carefree laughter of before. It was gentler, like music learned again after forgetting the tune. Sometimes, I'd catch Lena watching him quietly, her eyes wet but smiling. Once, she turned to me and whispered, Do you know the first thing he said when I tucked him in last night? What? He said, I knew you'd find me. I had to turn away before she saw my tears. But healing has its shadows, too. Some people in the neighborhood weren't kind. Whispers followed her when she walked to the market, stories twisted by time and gossip. She ran off and left her child. Someone murmured once. Now she comes back and wants sympathy. I saw the way her shoulders stiffened, but she kept walking. Later that night, I found her on the porch again, staring at her hands. They're right, she said softly. I left him. You left to save him, I corrected. There's a difference. She looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time since she'd returned, I saw peace flicker behind her eyes. Maybe small, but real. One evening, as the monsoon finally broke, the rain began to fall exactly like it had 3 years before. Rafi ran outside, barefoot, spinning in the downpour. Come, Mama, he shouted, laughing. Come dance with me. Lena hesitated at the door. Then she stepped out, letting the rain soak her hair, her clothes, her fears. She lifted her face to the sky and began to laugh, a sound I hadn't heard in years. Watching them, I realized something simple but powerful. Sometimes people leave not because they stop loving you, but because the world leaves them no choice. And sometimes the miracle isn't in the leaving, it's in the coming back at all. But healing has its shadows too. Some people in the neighborhood weren't kind. Whispers followed her when she walked to the market, stories twisted by time and gossip. She ran off and left her child. Someone murmured once. Now she comes back and wants sympathy. I saw the way her shoulders stiffened, but she kept walking. Later that night, I found her on the porch again, staring at her hands. They're right, she said softly. I left him. You left to save him, I corrected. There's a difference. She looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time since she'd returned, I saw peace flicker behind her eyes. Maybe small, but real. One evening, as the monsoon finally broke, the rain began to fall exactly like it had 3 years before. Rafi ran outside, barefoot, spinning in the downpour. Come, Mama, he shouted, laughing. Come dance with me. Lena hesitated at the door. Then she stepped out, letting the rain soak her hair, her clothes, her fears. She lifted her face to the sky and began to laugh, a sound I hadn't heard in years. Watching them, I realized something simple but powerful. Sometimes people leave not because they stop loving you, but because the world leaves them no choice. And sometimes the miracle isn't in the leaving, it's in the coming back at all. That night, after Rafi was asleep, she handed me a small envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Part of what I earned," she said. "I want to start again. Maybe help at your shop. Maybe you open a sewing corner like before." I smiled. "You don't owe me anything, Lena." She shook her head. "This isn't about owing. It's about rebuilding." She paused. Do you think I can still be a good mother?" I reached for the envelope and set it aside. "You already are," I said gently. "You came back. That's what mothers do. They always find their way home." A few months later, the shop had a new name painted on its front wall. Rafi and Mama's Corner. She insisted on it, said it was time for their story to start belonging to something good. Customers came, not just for the goods, but for the warmth, the quiet, steady joy that lived inside that small space. And every day after school, Rafi would sit at the counter, drawing pictures again, this time of the family, whole and smiling. On the anniversary of her return, Lena brought out a small box and placed it on the table. Inside were three things: the letter she'd written from abroad, the one that had reached us too late, and Rafi's old toy car. "It's missing a wheel," she said softly, "but he still kept it." I nodded. "He was waiting to show it to you." She smiled through tears. "Then maybe I'll buy him a real one someday." The rain began to fall again, gentle this time, washing the dust off the streets, the walls, the years. Rafi ran to the door and called, "Uncle, Mama, come see the rainbow." We stepped outside, and there was a bright, impossible bridge across the sky. Lena looked at it and whispered, "3 years. It feels like a lifetime." "Maybe it was," I said, "but you both made it through." She took a deep breath, the kind that feels like starting over. "I think," she said, "we're finally home.